In the year 1869, the small town of Elmwood, Iowa, slumbered under a blanket of soft white snow. The gables of cultivated homes emerged like solemn sentinels, each adorned with delicate frost, punctuating a landscape that seemed too quiet, a veneer of peace over the throbbing heart of discontent simmering beneath. Families clutched their secrets tightly, but few could rival the enticing aura of the Mayers family. Caleb and Martha Mayers, owners of a prosperous general store, were regarded as the pillars of Elmwood. Martha moved through town like a queen, her gown trailing behind her, whispering kindness wherever she went. Caleb was stout and jovial, frequently exchanging hearty handshakes and loud laughter with neighbors. Together, they created a facade of perfection that drew admiration and praise from the townsfolk. Their home was a sprawling old structure that creaked under the weight of history and secrets. The front porch, wrought with elegant intricacies, stretched towards the street, where children played, laughing and chasing one another without a care. The aroma of wood smoke mingled with the sweet scent of baking pies, inviting yet deceptive. However, everyone whispered about the peculiarities surrounding their family. The couple had no living children of their own but had adopted two boys, Thomas and Henry, and a girl named Clara. Despite the soft smiles that graced Martha's face and Caleb's hearty laughter, the children rarely ventured outside or engaged with their peers. Their appearances drew a mixture of curiosity and fear, a gathering storm cloaked by the comforting pleasantries of everyday life. As winter wore on, strange occurrences began to seep through the cracks of their home. Shadows flitted across windows, and neighbors often remarked how they saw Clara staring blankly from the second-floor window in the dead of night, her dark hair falling around her shoulders like a shroud. Once a local seamstress claimed to hear faint cries emanating from the house during her late-night sewing. The whispers gathered in the corners of Elmwood, sketching together an image of unease. But it was an unremarkable Tuesday in February when the cracks widened. A neighbor, Mrs. Davidson, observed a chilling sight on her way home from the market. She saw Caleb standing beside the barn, whispering intently to Clara, who stood at his side, her gaze fixed on the ground. What struck her as odd was the glint of something in Caleb's hand, a dark bundle wrapped tightly. That night, as the temperature dropped, Mrs. Davidson couldn't shake the feeling that something was profoundly wrong. Hearing Clara's whimpers from the Mayer home echoed through her mind. With shadows creeping in alongside the sunset, she lit a candle and drew a heavy cloak around herself, all the while mining her thoughts for explanations. The following days were sprinkled with uncharacteristic events. When neighbors inquired about the children, Caleb and Martha offered benign smiles, insisting the children were a bit under the weather. Yet on the mornings when he opened his shop, Caleb's eyes reflected an exhaustion obscured by an imposing mask of joviality. And when Clara, Thomas, and Henry made rare appearances, their apprehensive glances and sudden silences spoke volumes, a language no one in Elmwood understood. Fear twisted itself deeper into the heart of the town, culminating with the flurry of a late winter storm. 2 days passed with heavy snowfall before Clara disappeared, only to be spotted sitting by the barn, surrounded by an unsettling collection of stuffed animals, all crudely stitched together. Their eyes, dark buttons reflecting the dim light, were eerily human-like. It left those who caught a glance feeling as though they had stumbled upon something both macabre and unreal. Underneath that snow-laden sky, whispers slithered through Elmwood like a creeping fog. It was an illusion, this family, one that masked a chilling truth that lingered just beyond the facade of cheer, awaiting its moment to unveil a horror wrought from layers too deep to fathom. Time passed, lasting like a fading photograph, its edges worn and frayed. The whispers grew into a muted symphony of dread. Through the town, tales of the Mayers family mutated like a fever dream. New arrivals speculated while long-time residents clung to their gut feelings. The children were not just odd, something about their life was profoundly unsettling. Clara's space became a point of both fascination and fear, especially following that day by the barn. Locals hinted at strange sightings, the boys rushing in and out of their house, retreating after a glance over their shoulders like prey sensing the hunter nearby. Those fleeting glimpses fed imaginations, boys who would cross a street not out of play but fear. It was during this time that the town's doctor, Dr. Barrett, returned from a trip to the neighboring county, his brow fraught with worry. Gripping a dusty ledger, he had taken notice of cases involving missing children, ones that were described almost precisely against his reeling memory of the Mayers' arrivals. Margins were blurred, and time itself seemed elastic as he took note of how quickly the siblings had been welcomed into town, absorbed like water into a thirsty ground. Rumors ebbed and flowed through Elmwood's snow-laden streets like the midwinter gusts. Martha's charitable acts were eclipsed by whispers regarding the children. Classmates at the Little Red Schoolhouse spoke of bruises hidden beneath tattered sleeves or an odd refusal to engage during recess. Clara's outbursts and anxious glances bore evidence of a history unspoken, a sinister inhale before the final breath. Dr. Barrett, unwavering yet troubled, made his way to the Mayers' home one February evening. The air held the weight of impending storms, and as he approached, the empty door loomed larger, warning him away. Within that home, the walls enclosed secrets like a cage, holding on to matters of the heart capable of spilling into the light. Inside, the house was unnervingly quiet. Martha welcomed him with her usual charisma, adorned in comfortable fabrics, but Caleb's presence was unsettling, veering from jovial to strangely calculating. Dr. Barrett inquired about the children, each question weighed down by the heaviness of genuine concern. As Martha laughed lightly, draping her arm around Caleb, the room grew stifling. "Ah, my dear Clara tends to be shy," Martha laughed, brushing off the questions as if they were nothing more than gathering clouds before a storm. But the doctor's keen eyes caught glimpses of something sinister. Hidden behind cheerful chatter were servants of dread, desperate silences, and an all too familiar tension in the corners of that ornate living room. Later, while leaving, Dr. Barrett noticed Clara watching from the window, shadows creasing her young face, a porcelain doll caught in a storm of worry. It was a sight that roiled in his gut, a gnawing sensation all too familiar and equally troubling. He made a mental note to allow concern to evolve into action. As the townsfolk drifted through their everyday lives, shunning what they could ignore, a menacing reality formed behind those closed doors. It became increasingly clear that silence was not just complicit, it had become an accomplice in a frightening tableau, a hush-aided willing participant in what lay tantalizingly close to the edge of exposure. Dr. Barrett pondered the implications, knowing something had to shift, some decision made. However, with each passing day, good intentions seemed locked away alongside a growing darkness, bound tightly like the peculiar secrets behind those closed doors, where children's cries echoed briefly only to dissipate into the air like smoke signaling from a distant fire. As spring's thaw beckoned the arrival of chirping robins, the shadows still lingered around the mayor's home, burgeoning like weeds in a neglected garden. Dr. Barrett, driven by both worry and a stubborn resolve, turned his attentions inward, conducting a meticulous examination of the past. The town had remained silent on the question of the children, but he could not quell the uneasiness brewing within himself. It demanded scrutiny. The first phase was simple, requiring quiet investigation and a personal review of local records. The twists in the story unraveled like threads through a tapestry, and as those threads intermingled, a path began to form. It began with those documents, birth certificates, adoption records, each page revealing a layer of deception. He learned that the children had arrived in Elmwood shortly after being adopted from a yet-to-be-identified agency. Ages, family histories, names each linked together leading straight into a murky void. Rumors escalated into unease as more was uncovered, with research revealing connections to a series of suspicious dealings. Sullen bureaucrats quick to profit and turned a blind eye to those asking questions at the adoption agency, all too eager to provide children with empty backgrounds. One particular find chilled him, a log entry filed under suspicious behavior, ranging from missing children to those marked undesirable. In rows of dusty ledgers, shadows evolved into transparent truths and worries crept steadily into the heart of an already haunted existence. But it was the day the young boys, Thomas and Henry, wandered into town that became the point of no return. They stumbled upon a local seamstress, Mrs. Hutchins, who was mending an apron. Their eyes darted, laden with unshed fear and secrets held too tightly. And then, as if the unthinkable were drawing near, Thomas's low voice slipped out amidst the chatter, "We can't go back." Questions tumbled from Mrs. Hutchins' lips, veiled in concern. "What do you mean, dear, why not?" They hesitated, mouth agape, caught in the unyielding pull of a past they did not understand. "The basement, no one can go there." The revelation froze the air around them as the weight of his words brought chills to her spine. In that moment, the resolve within Dr. Barrett solidified. He was no longer merely watching from the periphery. He understood that lurking behind those innocent smiles were horrors bound by fear and silence. A plan began to shape itself. Under the cover of darkness, they would retrieve justice, with whispers of discontent held tightly by those who carried secrets in their hearts like a shroud. It wasn't enough for them to wear masks of ignorance any longer. Over the following days, former acquaintances and villagers found themselves embroiled in a tumultuous current, driven by the sudden need to confront the truth. On a chilly May evening, the townsfolk arrived at the mayor's home, a mix of grim determination and apprehension coursing through their veins. They moved as a single entity toward the homestead, an army set against the darkness. As they entered, the heavy air bore the weight of years gone unchallenged. Dr. Barrett led the charge, and there, in the center of the parlor, was an unsettling sight: stuffed animals arranged around a small table like nefarious little guardians, fluffy faces obscuring their true intent. "Where are the children?" Barrett's voice thundered through the vast space, demanding recognition of the horror encapsulated within those walls. The chilling silence was forthright as Caleb and Martha stood rooted like trees in an ever-thickening storm. With borrowed strength, Martha's voice trembled. "In the basement," her words hung in the air like a death knell, slicing through the murmurs of disbelief that played out around them. Dr. Barrett's pulse quickened. The dread he had nurtured over the months blossomed into raw terror within his gut as they descended, swallowed by darkness, into the depths of that basement. When the door creaked open, a smell of mildew mixed with dread enveloped them, engulfing their senses. The flickering lanterns cast unsettling shadows, stirring paranoia. The stairs groaned beneath them, and the world above fell away. As the last step reverberated, it revealed horrors frozen in time. The basement was a dismal labyrinth. Large wooden crates lay scattered around, unzipped fabric exposed to reveal what appeared to be crude forms of mattresses stuffed with what one colleague would later claim to be animal pelts. A shattered mirror hung precariously from a wall, reflecting fractured images of despair. But it was the children, their silent, trembling forms huddled like birds in a corner, that brought tears to Dr. Barrett's eyes. Thomas and Henry, terrified but alive, were crouched against a jagged, rusting wall. Clara was there too. Her gaze met his, and in that fleeting second he felt bonds of empathy weave through the air. It all became too real, an unveiling of the unseen as they pushed through ragged shreds of fear. "Help us," Clara whispered, breath trembling as if truth itself had become physical. As authorities arrived, windows settled in uneasy silence, heavy with the burden of revelation. The mayor's family stood accused, but it was only after the shadows left those walls that the scars of this human tragedy begun to unfurl and reveal the demons that thrived on silence. The trials that followed unfolded like enigmatic stories woven from the fabric of Elmwood's darkest threads. Within the confines of the courthouse, the air thrummed with tension as those once enraptured by the facade of the mayor's family now watched aghast. Caleb and Martha stood accused of cruelty unimaginable, their once beloved lives irreversibly shattered under the unforgiving light of the courtroom. Dr. Barrett took the stand, recounting the layers of deception he unearthed, their adoptions cloaked in anonymity, the missing children, and the last thread that held it all together: the darkness embedded within the basement. It wasn't merely about the survival of the children. It was about revealing the twisted moral fabric evil could weave amidst the everyday silence of a small town. As jurors listened, they were moved to tears, some weeping openly. They witnessed the living consequences of cruelty that lurked beneath the skin of perfection, and the testimonies of the children echoed hauntingly like distant chimes on an autumn breeze. Clara struggled to share her story, trembling but resolute. "He said we would be lost if we didn't obey. It was what the animals wanted." Her words left the courtroom hushed, an uncomfortable silence filling the air, with gasping breaths mingling with whispered phrases. But even as the weight of damning evidence unfolded, there were those who clung fiercely to the mayor's innocence, shaking their heads in denial. "They were good people," one of the neighbors claimed passionately. "How could they have done such things?" Yet the cracks in that facade had widened, revealing raw truths that ultimately could not be ignored. As the verdict approached, human emotions sputtered together. Was the darkness an unfathomable well of cruelty, or a tragic misguidance of misguided love woven into a tapestry of what was right and wrong? The jury deliberated indulgently, minds contorted with the weight of humanity's darkest tendencies. The verdict, when finally returned, sent ripples through the town. Caleb received a life sentence, while Martha was deemed mentally unfit for trial, destined instead for confinement within an asylum, thus truly dissolving any thread she had to the life she once knew. Justice itself felt pointless, a reaction but not balance restored. Over time, echoes of those days faded like distant thunder, leaving behind whispers of pain scattered throughout Elmwood. What became of the survivors, however, varied. Some retreated entirely, their lives burnt into silence. Others emerged, bearing the burden of resilience and strength earned against tremendous odds. Years passed, dwindling into stories traded over quiet dinners. Dr. Barrett left the town, taking with him the memories tethered to each corner and hollowed space, committed to writing a memoir detailing the hidden lives exhibited between the cracks of everyday life. Memorial eventually took shape near the local park, as community members gifted trees and lanterns inscribed with names long forgot but not erased from collective memory. And every autumn, as leaves danced in the brisk air, the inhabitants of Elmwood congregated, recounting the hardships woven across time, not to dwell in sorrow, but to vow never to forget the bindings of truth, resilience, and an unwavering need to guard against the darkness that lay hidden in plain sight. And on moonlit evenings, when shadows swept down the streets, I often thought of Clara, Thomas, and Henry, how they emerged from the depths of despair, each navigating life's currents with the strength gained from both suffering and survival, a reminder woven indelibly into the fabric of Elmwood's narrative. So as we gather in that memorial garden, we remember not just the brutal past but the echoes of those who bore witness against a chilling silence, a testament that oftentimes, even within the walls of a home, lies a macabre cradle of both horror and resilience, entwined forever in the fabric of human humanity. As the seasons continued their cyclical dance, the garden stood resolute, a vibrant sanctuary nestled among the heart of Elmwood, alive with whispers of stories untold. The trees swayed gently, their branches cradling lanterns that flickered softly at dusk, illuminating names etched with care. Each flicker became a reminder, a guiding light veering into darkness, ensuring that the shadows would not reclaim what had been lost. Dr. Barrett returned to Elmwood years later, compelled by a nagging sense of unfinished business. The air felt heavy with memories as he drove through the familiar streets, now rippling with life. Children laughed, their voices echoing against the trees, their innocence a stark contrast to the pod of whispers he had left behind. Within moments of stepping into the memorial garden, he felt the silence seep into him, knitting heavier strands of emotion across his heart. He stood alone for some time, eyes scanning the names engraved in the stone, the haunting reminders of children lost, their silent stories weaving intricate tapestries through the fabric of the town. The annual remembrance service loomed just days away, and townspeople prepared to gather, an assembly of souls tethered to the memories of those stolen away too soon. Each lantern, each name included in the ceremonies, acted as an anchor, binding the community's collective memory in a pledge to safeguard against eerie silences that could envelop Elmwood again. On the day of the gathering, the sun broke through the clouds, generously casting light upon the garden and filtering through leaves laden with promises of renewal. Dr. Barrett joined the villagers, some familiar faces now lined with years of tribulation, others new yet drawn to the echoes of the past. As he listened to those who spoke, parents and friends, tears pooled in the eyes of many, but beneath that sorrow lay a fierce determination. "We carry them within us as we walk forward," a local teacher declared, her voice a steady flame flickering against whispered memories. "They are with us in the laughter of our children and the compassion we extend." Dr. Barrett stepped forward not only to honor the dead but to ensure their stories were not buried beneath the layers of time and silence. He shared his own reflections, how fear had shielded the town from truths lurking just beyond their polished lives, a reminder that every whisper could veil a story and every smile could conceal pain. "Let us not forget the horror that unfolded in darkness," he urged, "but rather let us illuminate our choices with insights gained from the past. We must remain vigilant, for ignorance can silence truth in an instant." The gathering responded with murmurs of steadfast resolve, a chorus of souls committed to bearing the weight of those lost. As twilight painted the sky with strokes of deep indigo, the lanterns ignited in unison, casting a warm glow across the gathering. Each flame intertwined, an intricate tapestry of light that fought against the night, a powerful symbol of unity against the shadows that had once loomed large. Throughout those hours of remembrance, stories cascaded through the crowd like leaves on a breeze, each anecdote laced with threads of grief yet bursting with resilience. Little did the townsfolk know that Clara, Thomas, and Henry had woven their own narratives into the hearts of those who had stood by them. They had grown, releasing scars that once constrained them, finding their own paths towards healing and liberation. What was once a memory of despair had transformed into a living testament, a place of refuge where others could seek solace while bowing to the shadows past without fear of being consumed. Years tumbled forward, and the garden became a gathering place not only for sorrowful memories but for the joy of life itself. The children of Elmwood played beneath the branches where soft lanterns hung, their laughter ascending toward an infinity that cradled the memory of those who had come before them. As the seasons changed, memories morphed and expanded, a cycle of rebirth that nurtured both past and present. The lanterns flickered on warm summer nights while conversations beneath rustling leaves wove together bright aspirations for the future. In this gathering of community spirit, hearts remained unyielding against divisiveness, while empathy emerged as the most potent force against the darkness. Dr. Barrett found himself reflecting on the nature of evil discovered during those relentless investigations. He knew that darkness could lie in the unlikeliest of places, hidden beneath charming facades, waiting for complacency to allow its space to thrive. It brought him comfort that this collective understanding could help dispel the chilling truths of yesterday. In a small town, memories were molded by history, and where once despair had nestled into every crack, a heartbeat now echoed with life. Elmwood had overcome the silent whispers of secrets long concealed, choosing light, love, and community over the cold sting of isolation. And in that garden, beneath the stars glittering overhead, he felt a sense of fruition, a longing to ensure the failures of the past would never be repeated. The lanterns above glowed tenderly, sustaining the memories etched in stone while inviting new beginnings. Each flicker ignited a promise. The children, though hidden from sight, would forever be part of Elmwood, reminding every citizen that true resilience is born from a willingness to confront nightmares and emerge relentless in the pursuit of light. As Dr. Barrett stood under the canopy of night, he whispered a silent promise into the crisp air: "Never again shall we allow silence to smother the voices of the lost." And with that vow, the town of Elmwood set forth, forging ahead through darkness, one flickering lantern at a time. As the years continued to pass in Elmwood, the memorial garden blossomed with vitality, echoing the resilience woven into its very design. The townspeople held on to the lessons learned in the aftermath of tragedy, each memory built into sturdy roots, each lantern a tribute to courage and tenacity. Yet as the garden flourished, the shadows of the past sought to linger, trailing behind like a specter refusing to fade. Dr. Barrett, now a fixture within the community, spearheaded discussions on child welfare, aiming to fortify protections against the kind of evil that had once ensnared the mayor's children. The local school introduced programs focused on empathy, fostering a culture where children could openly discuss their emotions and experiences. The community rallied together, working diligently to ensure that no child would ever again feel as though they were trapped in an invisible cage. Although the atmosphere was imbued with positivity, whispers of regret still meandered through Elmwood streets, entwined with a fear that the past could repeat itself. As long as memories lingered, so too did an undercurrent of unease. It was during one of Dr. Barrett's community forums, a gathering ripe with intention and resolve, that a new chapter began to unfold. A woman stood to speak, her hands shaking as if grasping a less tangible fear. Rebecca Hargrove, a local historian with an insatiable curiosity for the town's past, knew there was more buried beneath the history of Elmwood than anyone cared to uncover. "What if there are other stories?" she said tremulously, "other tragedies veiled by silence? We owe it to the children yet to be born to confront our shadows, don't we?" Her words captured the collective breath of the room. Concern and curiosity blended, encouraging conversations that not only questioned but sought the deeper truths often evaded by the comforting narratives of blissful ignorance. Dr. Barrett, moved by Rebecca's plight, extended an invitation to delve into the town's history, an investigation bridging the lapse between silence and action. Together, they unearthed files buried in dusty archives, stories of children lost, families fractured, and whispers that traced back to forgotten ruse. With each turn of the pages, a narrative emerged, intertwining the lives of those who had suffered in silence, feeding a burgeoning fire for justice. The haunting echoes of history soon became tangible, revitalizing old wounds that had never truly healed. Rebecca rediscovered the account of Anne Whittaker, a young girl thought to have vanished nearly 2 decades prior. Anne's disappearance had ensnared the town in a web of fear, yet soon became overshadowed by the allure of the mayors and their ill-fated legacy. As Dr. Barrett read through the details, disturbing accounts of the search that turned futile, he felt the chilling weight of guilt descend upon him. What became of the children who briefly inhabited the shadows of Elmwood? He knew better than anyone that deep-seated pain could thrive in forgotten corners. It waited patiently, hoping to resurface when least expected. He and Rebecca decided to dig deeper into Anne's story, launching a campaign to reignite discussions surrounding cold cases in Elmwood, while aiming to breathe life into memories left to languish in the stillness of denial. Weeks turned into months as neighbors became invested in the endeavor that had once frightened them. Meetings transformed from hushed exchanges to fervent dialogues. Maps were studied, files compiled, and families reacquainted with the ache of loss. The past, though stitched with darkness, began to coalesce into a collective promise to keep the light alive. On a brisk autumn afternoon, the community gathered to honor the memory of Anne Whittaker, alongside the countless nameless victims embedded within Elmwood's history. The sky bore witness to their collective grief as Dr. Barrett stood at the forefront once more. "We cannot afford to forget," he implored as the townspeople held candles aloft, flames flickering steadfastly in the wind. "For every life carries a story, a legacy that deserves to echo through time." The moment signified an awakening, a tribute shared not only for Anne but for all those who had been cast aside, unwillingly blending into the shadows. It shifted the narrative away from a past enshrouded in pain, instead striving to illuminate paths for healing, a reimagined Elmwood seeking not the burden of silence but the liberation of truth. Justice isn't merely a matter of law, it's built upon a foundation of collective memory and accountability. These principles strengthen the community's resolve, pushing them to transform Elmwood into a haven of protection for the vulnerable. Each new child became a guardian of truths they were free to voice, an empowerment cascading through the generations. As memory jogged the spirits of those who whispered in the dark, hearts began to mend. A documentary team expressed interest in telling Elmwood's story, an expansive portrait of resilience rooted in tragedy, granting a platform for survivors to share their legacies, to reclaim their voices. It sparked dialogue within the larger community. The ripples went far beyond local borders, echoing into other towns where similar silences had perpetuated fear. A few years later, as the documentary played in theaters packed with neighbors both familiar and new, it sparked deeper conversations about safeguarding children in every town across the nation. The echoes of Elmwood met with the willing hearts of those wishing to learn. The unseen found their voice through the platform of storytelling, weaving through hearts united in vigilance against the fragility of silence. In time, those flickering lanterns in the garden became symbols not of sorrow alone, but of triumph over adversity, a living testament to choices made in the face of fear. Clara, Thomas, and Henry, now adults, found solace in the unfolding narrative, recognizing their contributions to the growth of vigilance and love as they continued to flourish. Dr. Barrett wandered the garden in a contemplative moment one evening, the sun setting low on the horizon, a panorama rich with deep golden hues. He felt a profound appreciation for the journey, not simply the battles fought but the fervent stand made for those who would never be forgotten, those who had endured the most profound of trials. In the quiet of the night, he promised this truth: we can never outrun our shadows, but we can choose to illuminate them. With that vow echoing through the air, he walked toward the flickering lanterns, knowing that as long as there were voices courageous enough to tell stories, there was light bursting forth against darkness, forever reminding Elmwood to stand guard against the silence. The years rolled on, weaving new threads into the tapestry of Elmwood. As the community moved forward, their past remained rooted in the soil of collective memory, forever influencing their actions and guiding their hearts. Yet in the layers of history lay an enduring promise: to nurture a place where silence could never smother the truths that deserved to be shared. The lanterns in the memorial garden flickered gently, casting a warm glow against the crisp night sky, their presence a beacon for generations to come. Each light served as a reminder of the courage housed within those who dared to speak out, those who had walked the delicate line between fear and courage, emerging stronger for it. Dr. Barrett, now revered as a symbol of resilience, continued to advocate for the vulnerable. He established community workshops aimed at teaching children how to voice their feelings and experiences, empowering them to break through any darkness they might encounter. The children of Elmwood blossomed like the flowers planted within the memorial garden, learning early that their voices mattered, that bearing witness was a form of shared strength. Within that garden, reunions occurred and bears of brave stories drew breath. Clara moved back to Elmwood, blossoming into a beacon of hope for those who needed guidance. Thomas and Henry, too, returned. Together they forged a familial bond stronger than the scars their past had left behind. They embodied the spirit of resilience, standing as reminders that even in the face of pain, healing was possible. On the anniversary of Anne's disappearance, the town would gather once more in the garden, united by their commitment to uphold the legacies of those lost. Candles danced in the breeze, illuminating the stars beyond, a reflection of the lives intertwined in Elmwood's fabric. It became a day not merely for remembrance but for hope, drawing in those who had once been silent, encouraging them to share their stories, forging connections that echoed across generations. Life thrived in the harmonious blend of shared histories and vibrant futures. New families settled in the area, drawn by stories of compassion and a community willing to protect one another. They too contributed to the growth of the garden, planting seeds of something greater than themselves, a legacy that would nourish love and understanding long after they were gone. As twilight transitioned into dawn and seasons shifted with persistent grace, Elmwood emerged not just as a marker on a map, but as a testament to the human spirit's capacity to rise above adversity. Each voice mattered, and the threads of stories interwove to create a rich fabric of shared consciousness, pushing back against the shadows time had once cast. And so, beneath the watchful glow of lanterns, each flicker a promise born from the past, the town flourished, forever vigilant, forever united in the light against the darkness. They knew now that silence could only thrive in the absence of truth, and they chose to let their voices resound clearly, ensure that no child would ever wander unseen, unheard again. Together, they embraced not just their own stories but those of all who had come before, the echoes of lives lived and felt, shaping the present and forging the pathways into a future where hope and vigilance walked hand in hand, illuminated by the flickering light of memory.